An original podcast from podlatino.com.
There are looks that comfort, others that question, some that judge in silence. And there is, within the world of Greek myth, a gaze that does neither. It simply stops. It turns whoever receives it into stone, into statue, into permanent silence. That gaze belonged to Medusa, one of the most feared and fascinating figures the ancient Greeks ever imagined. And the story we are about to follow is that of a young man who had to find her without ever looking her in the eyes. Perseus was not yet a famous hero. He was young, without experience in battle, and without an army behind him. But he had something the gods tend to notice, a mix of courage and good sense that set him apart. His mother was Danae, a woman of noble birth who had been locked in a tower by her own father, King Perseus of Argos, after receiving a troubling prophecy that his daughter's son would one day take his throne. To prevent it, he shut her away from the world. But no tower is tall enough to keep Zeus away. Zeus, the king of the gods on Olympus, found his way to Danae, and from that union Perseus was born. Perseus did not dare harm them directly, but he sealed them both inside a wooden chest and cast it into the sea. The sea, in Greek myth, tends to have its own ideas. In this case, the chest washed safely ashore on an island called Seriphos, where a kind fisherman found them and took them in. That is how Perseus grew up, far from his homeland, without the weight of a famous name, learning what life teaches when it gives you nothing to start with. Over time, the king of that island, a man named Polydectes, set his eyes on Danae. He wanted to marry her, and the biggest obstacle standing in his way was Perseus himself, a young man who was not about to stand by while his mother was pressured by a king he did not trust. Polydectes was clever. He knew he could not get rid of Perseus by force, so he chose another approach, a trap. He organized a grand banquet where every guest was expected to bring a horse as a gift, a way of showing wealth and loyalty to the host. But Perseus had no horses. He was poor. And when he arrived empty-handed, Polydectes looked at him with a slow, calculated smile and said that if he could not bring a horse, he would have to bring something of equal value, or greater, whatever the king chose to ask for. Perseus, without thinking it through, answered with the easy confidence of someone who has not yet learned the full weight of his own words. He would bring whatever the king commanded. And Polydectes did not hesitate. He asked for the head of Medusa, a feat no mortal had ever accomplished, a mission that was, in every sense, a death sentence dressed up as a challenge. Medusa was one of three sisters known as the Gorgons, ancient and terrible creatures who lived at the edge of the known world, beyond the seas, in a place the maps of the time simply left blank. The Gorgons were not minor figures. Their name alone was enough to make people tremble, even those who had never seen them. Of the three sisters, two were immortal. Medusa was not, and in a way, that made her the most tragic of all. Different versions exist of what Medusa was before she became what everyone feared. Some traditions describe her as a powerful and terrifying being from the very beginning. Others tell of a young woman transformed by the wrath of Athena, goddess of wisdom, after an offense committed inside her sacred temple. Whatever her origin, every telling agrees on this. Medusa had serpents where others have hair, and her gaze could turn any living creature to stone the moment it met her eyes directly. Not out of calculated cruelty, but through some ancient and irreversible power that could not be switched off. Perseus knew he could not face her alone, and fortunately, he did not have to. Athena and Hermes came to him before he set out. It is not unusual for gods to get involved in the stories of Greek heroes, but they do not always do so with genuine generosity. This time, they did. Athena gave Perseus her shield, polished until it shone like a perfect mirror. It was not only a tool of defense, it was a tool of intelligence. With that shield, Perseus could see Medusa's reflection without ever needing to look at her directly. The image caught in the bright metal did not carry the deadly power of the original gaze. It was like watching fire through water. Real, but contained. Hermes, the swift messenger of the gods, completed the set. He gave Perseus winged sandals that could carry him through the air at the speed of wind. He also provided a special bag, tough and sealed shut, where Perseus could store Medusa's head without any risk of her power causing harm. And finally, Hermes pointed him toward the helmet of Hades, god of the underworld, a helmet that granted its wearer complete invisibility. To obtain it, Perseus would first need to visit a group of ancient beings known as the Nymphs of the North, who kept it in their care. But before he could reach them, there was one unavoidable stop: the Grey. The Grey were three ancient women, strange beyond description, who shared among the three of them a single eye and a single tooth, passing them back and forth whenever one of them needed to see or speak. They lived in a dark and remote place, and they were the only ones who knew the exact path to the Nymphs of the North. Perseus found them, watched their movements patiently, and waited for the right moment. When one of the three held the eye in her palm before passing it to the next, he took it. Without it, none of them could see a thing. Perseus made his offer. He would return the eye if they told him what he needed to know. The Grey, with no other choice, agreed, and Perseus continued on his way. The Nymphs of the North welcomed him without hostility and handed over the helmet of invisibility. With everything now in his possession, sandals on his feet, shield on his arm, bag at his side, Perseus rose above the sea and began flying toward the farthest edges of the world. The place where the Gorgons lived had a stillness that unsettled. Not the peaceful quiet of a forest at dawn, but the silence of something that does not move because it has no need to. Perseus arrived at night, wearing the helmet of invisibility, hovering in the air above that strange territory. From above, he could make out the shapes of the three Gorgons sleeping among the gray rocks. He could not look at them directly, but the steady reflection in his shield gave him enough to work with. He identified Medusa among her sisters by her position, by something in her presence that set her apart from the other two. He descended slowly. Every movement was deliberate, unhurried, as quiet as he could make it. Perseus was not acting with the reckless charge of a warrior rushing headlong into danger. He was moving with the focus of someone who understood that a single mistake would have no remedy. He kept his eyes fixed on the shield. He followed the reflection. He got close enough. And with one fast, clean, precise movement, he completed the task he had been sent to accomplish. He placed Medusa's head inside the bag without looking at it. The other two Gorgons woke at the sound and began searching furiously for the intruder, moving between the rocks, stirring the air. But the helmet of invisibility made Perseus impossible to find. He rose above the rocks, left that heavy, silent place behind, and flew out over the dark sea, with his heart pounding and his hands steady. There is something the myth describes almost like a poem, an image that is hard to forget once you have heard it. From the moment Medusa fell, according to Greek tradition, Pegasus was born, the winged horse, white as sea foam. A creature of pure beauty, appearing in the same instant as Perseus's victory. As if the myth wanted to remind us that even from the strangest and darkest moments, something completely extraordinary can emerge. Perseus returned to Seriphos with the mission complete. What had seemed impossible from the start, an assignment designed to get rid of him without anyone getting their hands dirty, had become the first great achievement of a hero who was only just beginning his story. Polydectes found something he had not expected. The young man he had tried to remove from his path had come back. But the most important part of this story is not the victory itself. It is how that victory was reached. Perseus did not overcome Medusa through brute force or blind courage. He faced her with calm, with the right tools, and with the wisdom to not stare danger directly in the face, when doing so meant losing before he even had a chance. He knew when to ask for help. He knew how to use what he had been given. He understood that bravery without a plan rarely gets you where you need to go. Medusa remained in the memory of the ancient world not simply as a defeated threat, but as a figure of unsettling power, tragic origin, and a gaze that no story could forget. Even after her death, her image kept appearing on shields, in temples, in Greek art across centuries, not to commemorate a defeat, but to call up protection. The gaze that once turned people to stone became a symbol of defense. That, too, is what great myths do. They take fear, look at it from the right angle, and turn it into something we can hold.